Hey folks, welcome to the Security Table. This is Chris Romeo, joined by Izar Tarandosh and Matt Coles. And we are going to jump right in, skip all the witty banter. So you can just remember witty banter from a previous episode that usually happens here in this little segment. We're going to dive right back into where we where we left off from, would be the right expression, where we left off in that last episode. And I kind of left a cliffhanger, but I gave you guys a week to think about this. So I'm expecting some brilliant solutions have been crafted inside of the brain. So the issue that I left us with at the conclusion, which was based on an interview I did with somebody else and kind of some of their opinions, the future of application security. I want to offer a hypothesis, I guess. Maybe not a hypothesis, just a prediction. I think that in the next number of years, I'm not sure if it's going to be 5 or 10 or how long it's going to take, but I think application/product security is going to be eaten by development. I think it's going to be absorbed. And when I say eaten, I mean it's going to be absorbed. Because the premise being we have a lot of friction in our day here between security and engineering. Different levels of friction, I would say, in different companies, but I've seen some companies where the friction level is there might be a fight here shortly, all the way down to we just don't really listen to what they say and stuff like that. So I'm imagining a world where security becomes part of engineering, and then everybody reports to the same boss, the CTO, the VP of engineering, the whatever, and so. Let's dive in there. I want to see, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is possible? Do you think it's irrational? Where does it sit on the scale here? Matt, you go first.
Well, so first rule of Security Fight Club is you don't talk about Security Fight Club. So it's interesting, actually. It's an interesting premise. I may answer it with a question or two. So quality engineering is part of engineering. It is not a distinct function, although it's not, well, maybe not best done by developers, because you do want a check and balance in place. But it's part of an engineering discipline, and so the requisite knowledge and experience and training and capability can all be served out of the engineering organization, right? That has existed for decades, right? Certainly in our industry. So both hardware and software related, right? You can have quality engineering and software engineering as side-by-side functions. What you're suggesting is making security engineering one of those functions. And in that regard, certainly for product development, it sounds reasonable. Are we there yet? Probably not. But should we be there? That's an interesting question, because what that means is that engineering organizations would have all the functions within them to basically govern their own destiny, and they already have structures in place for handling requirements and reporting and working with other parts of the business. Do you really need a check and balance from security? Is there any benefit to having security outside of that organization? Is what you're proposing? So it's actually really interesting. I wonder if that would work.
Governance is is kind of one of the sticking points.
Well, also response. So things like you have customer support that is not part of the engineering function, right? People to handle fielding bugs and working with customers. So similarly, would vulnerability and incident response be outside of that function? So
maybe they become part of customer success or customer service. Maybe they become a function there.
Right. So, but either way, security as a whole probably can't be consumed by the engineering organization. But it sounds like, if you use quality by comparison, engineering already contains quality functions. Could it contain security functions too? Maybe. And that might really work. Izar, what are you thinking there?
Well, I have to agree with you. And the thing is that for a long time, We have been using that pithy thing that says that if we do our job right, then we're going to work ourselves out of a job. And we usually say that when we're training developers and or training other security people. And for a while, I think it was cute, but now we are seeing what success looks like looming over us. But I think that one thing that I can for sure say is that if that ever happens, and as Matt says, I said that I think that for a certain portion of the work, that's definitely the way that things are going. It's not going to work to happen because of tools. It's not going to happen because the magical AI in the sky is doing its whole thing. It's going to happen because at the end of the day, developers are going to understand that secure code is quality code. They're going to incorporate the things that we have been talking for years upon years of all the principles and all the specifics and all that stuff. But at the same time, there will be other developers who will develop new ways of things that could go wrong. So there will be aspects of security that will still be very much needed, namely design, architecture. And I think that at the end of the day, what we're going to see is it's a sort of a commoditization of security knowledge where developers know just enough to get by day after day without perhaps an application security engineer sitting on their shoulder. But there will still be security functions out there beyond GRC, which I completely agree with Matt, is always going to be a problem. And no, not a problem, but it's always going to require more expertise than a developer probably wants to put there. One thing, though, that I want to throw in the mix, throughout this whole cycle where we teach, they learn, we measure, we get to conclusions, we never really got to ask them, do you want to do this? And I have the feeling that most developers, I won't say most, but many, a large percentage of the developers that I have met through the years are not really interested in getting security as a process, as a responsibility to themselves.
Can we just talk a little bit about DevSecOps then?
Do we have to?
Well, so first off, let me just jump in a little bit. Something you're describing. Yeah, you use the word developers a lot. When I was talking about this, I wasn't thinking developers specifically. I was thinking engineering organizations. So that includes non-developers within that organization. I agree with you. Most engineers probably don't want to take on security responsibility, although DevSecOps, we kind of give them that responsibility. Although I think at times I have a sense that we give them a lot of responsibility, but not a lot of authority or capability. And that's not universally, it's not universal, but it's sometimes there's observations there that seem to suggest that. But the notion that an engineering organization, not necessarily the engineers themselves, may take that function, right? Developers get taught how to write quality code, but they don't often get taught how to do quality engineering. Likewise, we train engineers how to write secure code, but not necessarily on the function of ensuring security. And if you look at it that way, I think that's where the engineering organization as a whole can pick up those tasks, as opposed to having a dedicated security organization sort of do it for them. And that's where I was going with. So I just want to clarify that because developers may want to take on that responsibility or they may not, but the engineering function as a whole should.
But when I think about this model, I'm not envisioning what we think of as the people that are on an AppSec team or on a ProdSec team today is going away. They just don't report to the CISO anymore. They're
Right.
part of the engineering organization and they're deployed. So it's not like it's not like we're taking all the security people and saying, you're just done. The developers are replacing you. The product managers are replacing you. The program managers are replacing you. We're bringing them into the fold. It's just we don't have. We're eliminating one of the big pluses of this is we're eliminating any potential political fighting between two separate organizations by putting them under one organization in one management chain that can make risk management decisions. At the end of the day, they can decide what are we going to do for security. And I think we've come far enough in our history. Like this would not have worked 20 years ago, would not have worked 10 years ago. I mean, when I first started in security, people were still saying, no. Like if we'd go to engineering, they'd be like, you need to do this. No, we don't. We don't have to do that. We're not there anymore, right? And that's why I can start to think about this new world approach, because I know I don't have people that are just going to tell me we're not doing it.
Yeah. They have to be equal partners to your organization, again, along the same lines of quality engineering and other aspects. But it would certainly help with things like funding, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd have, fewer opportunities for cross-charging and whatnot. And certainly would help with reporting. The only downside is the check and balance part, right? The GRC function, audit, we talked about vulnerability and incident response, where those functions go, how they're managed, right? There's still some cross-org communications that have to happen.
So that's one threat. You've identified one potential threat.
There is more. So again, in a perfect world, assuming that the cow is a perfect sphere, that would really work. But now throw into the mix the fact that if you get that team, bring it into the engineering team, you are most probably going to put them under, as Matt said, engineering management. Now, engineering management has very set ways of measuring performance, measuring goals, measuring achievements that don't really mesh with the way that we measure things at security. And sometimes that's even a very big source of friction. So now we are taking an overloaded management level, giving them a bunch of people that speak a completely different language, and saying, for the good of everybody, play nice, kids. Historically, it doesn't work like that.
Historically, but we're reaching new places now in organizational.
That's going to be a new place that has nothing to do with security itself, but a lot to do with management culture. And I'm not touching that one with.
Well, let's talk about the language. Let's talk about that language that you were describing, right? So the language of security today versus imagine a world where security is part of the engineering function, right? How different? First off, would it be the same language as we have today, and if not, what might it look like? So. And I'm thinking, and again, I'm using quality as a analog here, right? Developers talk about, there's code complexity, but there's also code velocity, number of lines of code produced and features implemented, et cetera. Well, quality engineering is about, test case cases developed, cases executed, pass rate or fail rate, defects. Of quality defects or of performance defects, or basically failure to meet requirements of validation and verification. If security was part of the engineering function, why wouldn't they be just translated into those terms? Where would there need to be? What translation would need to happen? Do you think?
Let me give you an extreme example, okay? And maybe even a very weak one. But let's say that you just brought a security researcher / pen tester into the team. And that person just went over what came out of the sprint, did their thing. Now they look at their manager and at their engineering manager and say, I didn't find anything. Now the engineering manager will say, oh, that's good. We don't have any risks. We don't have any problems, right? And the security person is going to look at them and say, I didn't say that. I said I didn't find anything.
But doesn't that force a cultural shift that will either break or it will make things very successful?
What is cheaper, to do a cultural shift, or for the engineering manager to say he didn't find anything, there's nothing to be found, and we are good, ship it?
So I'm going to ask a naive question here. When this researcher did their research, did they follow a process for this? And again,
Probably.
I'm thinking about let's talk about, if we talk about QA for a moment, right? So QA runs through all their tests and doesn't find any bugs. They go to their engineering manager, go, we didn't find any bugs. We ran all these tests. We had X amount of code coverage, right? Maybe we covered 80% of the code. We didn't find any bugs. Engineering manager will probably look at that and go, we have quality code.
But QA is testing for spec. They're testing a positive case. Right. Yes, the code does what the spec says that the code should be doing. Mm-hmm. The security person is doing the negative case. Hey, I clicked some stuff and it exploded. If it doesn't explode, does it mean that it won't explode if I click two things? No, it doesn't.
In your example, though, you're extracting an isolation mode, meaning you're not considering any of the other things that would be happening in any process that would be part of any program any of the three of us would build. We wouldn't rely on.
If they run fast, we know that everything works.
And we'd have WAFs blocking our traffic, and the hamster wheel
scanning and fixing and scanning and fixing.
AI reading the
piling
code.
up issues. Yeah. But the point is, though, this wouldn't be an isolated incident where the pen test, like the only thing the engineering manager has as data is the result of the pen tester's work, and then they're going to say we're good. No, they're going to have pipelines that are part of code builds happening that are doing software composition analysis. They're doing SAST. They're doing other
fuzzing,
other runtime stuff on the production side.
So now you're asking the engineering manager to become aware of those things, understand their limitations, understand the output they put out, interpret all that, and come out with a risk assessment on top of all the other things that they already do every day.
No, I mean, I'm thinking let's put a security person on their team. Like, they're not experts in quality. They don't
at the end of the day will come to the engineering manager and say, looking at all the stuff that we have, we didn't find much.
Yeah.
So the guy is going to ask, are we secure? That means that we're secure, right? And the guy says, I didn't say that.
Engineering managers don't ask that. That's executives.
The language is different. the language is different.
Immediately go up to, are we secure? Izar, are we secure?
Yeah. We don't measure things with the same stick, and we don't take risks with the same stick, right?
True.
In our book, Matt and I, we said that engineering moves at the speed of innovation, and security moves at the speed of caution. You can't drive the same car at two speeds at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we just have to make a superhighway, and we got to merge everybody together onto the same highway.
But you know what? That this whole conversation reminds me of your last LinkedIn post, because basically what we're saying here is, hey, we have achieved left maximum critical mass, right? we went left all the way. I say we have shift left so much that we are falling off of the table. I mean, it's
so we're falling left. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one yet. So, yeah. So I mean, I think just to kind of put a bow on the future of AppSec, and then we can transition and talk about shift left. You guys have challenged my thinking in good ways here, because you made me think, Matt, specifically about like, where does GRC sit? Where does audit sit? And I think it's possible for those things to live in the finance organization. I think it's possible.
Or legal.
If we're just going to do away with a separate security department. We know that privacy is already pretty much embedded with the legal side. That's just by nature where they've landed.
Sad as that is.
It is.
And by the way, we're not talking about things like IT security, right? We're talking about AppSec, development security.
Yeah, I mean, InfoSec should you could even pull this thread more and say, why does InfoSec exist? Why doesn't it live in IT? Why don't we just have people in IT thinking about security versus having a separate group that thinks about security versus a group who just thinks about building network architectures? Why do we have two separate teams doing this at the same time?
We keep talking about this, and I keep thinking, who watches the watchers? But not in terms of who watches people doing stuff, but there's a function here that the output is risk.
That's governance. That's GRC, though, right?
No. People are building stuff. That stuff carries risk. Mm-hmm. And we are saying, rather than having two teams, one that builds and one that checks what got built, let's get the one that checks what got built and put it together with the one that builds. And let's have it like be consumed by all the processes in that team. And to me, it goes back to now I don't have a function that actually independently checks what's coming out and giving me an output of risk that actually can be argued upon.
Think about the quality engineering analogy again here. Developers write code. Quality engineering validates the code that they write, and because they are a risk avoidance function too, just not the same risk. So there is a check and balance within a single engineering organization for quality engineering to exist side by side with developers, providing that check and balance.
There's even another function that exists in most big companies now that we haven't even touched on yet. There are groups now called enterprise risk. They're not part of cyber. They're not part of IT. They're looking at risk across the entire organization, from legal risk, regulatory risk, reputational risk. Cybersecurity is a small, it's a piece of what they're considering. Yep. But I know big companies, I know people that are doing that job now, and they're not part of cyber. They're not part of the security stack.
And they wouldn't recognize a line of code if it bit them in the ass.
Yeah, but their job is to think,
they're interested
about
in that risk index that comes out of the function of security that says, today, our developmental risk is blah, blah, blah.
But part of your objection here is that we don't have anybody watching. I would argue we don't have anybody watching now.
No, but
if somebody wants to sneak code into something, most likely they can get away and do it today.
Yes, but that goes to a different discussion, which we already sort of touched upon, which is we have nice tools. We don't have tools that embrace everything. And that seems to be changing, that there's a lot of stuff out there that's worrying about this kind of stuff, and even sign commits and whatnot. But I think that my point was that we keep trying to overload developers and, sorry, Matt, engineers, and I don't remember which word I was thinking about using. But we keep trying to overload them with the security thing without me really seeing... no, I'm going to contradict myself here.
We've done our job. We're done.
Victory. Victory.
This week is really, really easy to get me in a loop. But the thing here is that I think that engineers should know security, but we shouldn't expect them to know more security than they need to be able to do their jobs. Because at some point, security takes a jump, both in level, in depth, and even in breadth, that we shouldn't be expecting them to be able to by themselves explore and embrace and own. So that's why I think that there will always be a place to the security professional at so many different tasks, who will pick up that thing that happens after basic development happened. And again, Matt, to quality control. It's a nice parallel. It's not an analogy, I think, because it's in the set of things that are being sought here, theirs is a closed set. Security is an open set. We don't know the size of the set of things that we are looking for. They are testing for spec. We are testing for how can this go wrong.
I mean, they're testing further than spec, right? They're testing for performance, usually through the same function. That's part. I mean, you can't have a non-performance
system. And with chaos engineering,
quality.
you'll have quality engineers doing chaos engineering type tests, right? So.
Yeah. Chaos is a new thing, and it's great, but still, and I'm speaking here from a position of ignorance. I think that at the end of the day, it comes down to a gorilla banging on a keyboard, right? You're just throwing stuff out there and seeing if it breaks or not.
All my QA engineering friends are going to be like, what did Izar do?
Fuzz the word, right? I love the idea of fuzzing the word. We all know the limitations of a fuzzing system.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that my bottom line is it's great to push things left. They shouldn't go, not too many things should go too left. And there will always be a place for the security professional somewhere in there. What can and might and I hope happens is that we are going to have to innovate our own game to be able to answer these coming challenges in a way that actually brings value to the loop.
Oh, sorry, Chris, just one
I just
one
want
last.
closing arguments. That was his closing arguments, Your Honor.
Oh, I actually have one additional point I wanted to raise.
Go ahead. As long as it's on my side, you're fine to share it.
Oh, I don't know which side it's going to be on. The question always comes down to who should security be part of a which cost center should security engineering be part of? Should it be part of a revenue stream, or should it be part of operations?
Well, I don't know about you. It's part of my revenue stream.
Yeah, it's got to be part. I mean, it should be part of revenue stream. Too many people treat it as an operational expense, and that's
again,
I would
it's
say,
insurance.
But that's the classic route. That's That's what we did 25 years ago. It was an operational expense. It didn't make money. Security is not supposed to make money. If I heard people, how many times I've heard that in my career.
We're revenue protection.
We're here to protect the fort and whatnot. It's like, no, well, not in a product focused company. Like if you're a product focused company, security, if you don't have revenue if you don't have security and privacy. Your revenue goes away in the world that we live in now. You can't build a SaaS solution that doesn't consider security and privacy.
So here's the funny thing. I used to think like that too, until I saw the statistics, and I think that that's still true. We used to tell people, hey, if you have a security incident, your brand is going to be impacted and your stock price is going to be impacted. It isn't. They have like blips, and they just go back exactly to where they were. You look at the big ones, Sony, MGM, all that good stuff, or the big data breaches, some telcos and whatnot. The stock price just go right back to where it was.
Yeah, that is a
sad.
It's a sad state of affairs, though, right?
Yep.
So you're basically, I mean, with that conclusion, you're saying a company can willfully / woefully decide not to focus on security and get away with it.
Yeah.
Well, and then you'll have regulatory environments that will say otherwise, right? Especially in critical infrastructure, private-public partnerships.
Critical
not everybody's there.
Yeah, critical
not
infrastructure.
Everyone's there.
Whole other kind of set of. I think people understand the risks of critical infrastructure. I think most people understand. Well, we talked about that before. I think we concluded most people probably don't understand how much danger there is in the water supply, for example, or
God, don't even go there.
Yeah,
but
I don't want to go there.
Just to give you an example, Matt, you're totally right, and we talked about this in one of our first episodes, the utility value of things, right?
Right.
But one of the biggest wireless carriers, that thing is breached every day that ends with Y. Now, they sent me an email saying, "Oh, you are in our auto pay thing. So in order for you to continue on this, you're going to have to use a bank account rather than a credit card." So that took me to having to open a new account with a separate number and a separate card, just to once a month put money into that account, enough to pay that specific bill. And that whole account is just for that bill. Why? Because I don't trust my bank account number, like my everyday account number, with that specific company.
Yep.
And they don't care.
Nope. But how many other people would have done that isolation?
I hope many.
But probably pretty few.
I told everybody that I know works with them. But at the end of the day, the point is they don't care for that 0.00005 fee that they have to pay for the credit card every month, they are going to elevate your risk to a point that they don't care.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because they're not hit.
Well, you're going to make me an advocate for regulation now. Can't believe that's going to happen. By the way, my name's Chris Romeo, and I'm running for Congress.
By the way, my name is Izar, and I'm running to... Anyway.
Voting
people know what I'm running.
Voting opens
people
on,
know what I'm running for.
2 days from
I'm
now, right?
not running unless somebody's chasing me, so I don't know. You guys are trying.
They're gonna have to be bigger than you two, right? Like, I'm not running if somebody's smaller than me.
Remember, you don't have to be the fastest. You
Just
have to be faster than the next guy.
I mean, that's the rule of bears. Running away from a bear. You have to be faster than the bear. You got to be faster than your friend. All right. So did we? I don't know. I didn't get my.
We mangled this topic.
Let me see.
We didn't go left.
We will. But I have to provide my closing arguments. You had your closing argument.
Oh yeah,
before.
please.
So my closing argument. I mean, when I think about the value proposition of taking a separate organization and melding it together, yes, I understand there will be pain in figuring all those things out. So that's why I don't think it's going to happen now. I think it may happen 10 years in the future. It may happen further. But I think the future world is one where the security team is dissolved and is absorbed by various functions across the business. So the AppSec people and ProdSec people are in engineering. The people, the kind of GRC would have to be you'd have to take GRC and drop it under finance. Like I said, leave privacy under legal, or maybe bring privacy engineering back to engineering and let legal deal with the privacy issues on the side. But I think the value proposition in this is there's no longer infighting. There is, to Matt's point, there's budgetary alignment, because I can now just align on the things that I need to build to build the best possible product. And yes, your evidence about data breach is stark and scary, but it's the truth. But I think over time, there's going to be, when we get a privacy legislation here in the United States, and I think it's coming. I just don't know when it's going to happen. And I don't know if it's going to be GDPR for USA, but I think it's coming. I think we need it. I think that can drive a lot of the focus here. But I just think at the end of the day, it'll save, once we had this new system up and running, it'll save a lot of arguments, budgetary disagreements, and we'll put things in the right place, in my mind. Put it put those functions where they can have the biggest impact without the potential infighting that occurs at between security teams and various other functions within the business. And so with that, Your Honor, I rest my case. Oh, wait, no, I want to call a witness. I don't know who I would call. Who would I call as a witness? I don't know. I don't have any witnesses myself. Okay, let's spend a couple of minutes having some fun with this idea of shift left. So I got this new idea, okay? I want to bounce this off you guys. I'm going to start a marketing campaign, okay? I'm going to try to get everybody in our industry to believe something that we were talking about in the late 90s. But I'm going to summarize it in such a way, in a very simple thing. It's going to be called shift left. And I'm going to try to get them to, I'm trying to reinvent this thing right before your eyes, but it's partially a joke. I wrote a post on LinkedIn that's getting a lot of attention now, and I called it, "It's Time to Stop Shifting Left." And the point of it is, like, I remember, do you guys remember Joe Jarzenbeck from Department of Homeland Security? You guys were probably in kindergarten in that year when Joe was at DHS.
I'm older than you.
This is no, you weren't, but you guys were all about the same age. But late 90s, Joe Jarzenbeck was at Department of Homeland Security, and he started this revolution for security, for software security. And he called it Building Security In. You could go to buildingsecurityin.gov, and Joe and his team were writing all about software security and secure code, things. And they did a pretty good job. But that's really what shift left is. Like, shift left isn't anything new. It's the same thing Joe was talking about back in the late 90s. And I looked it up. Okay. Larry Smith in 2001 was the first person to use this term shift left. And he used it in the context of shifting left in the project cycles. He was like a program project person.
Wait, Pearl Larry Smith?
Ooh, is that the same one?
I'm asking.
No, I don't know. Now you've got me. It's such a common name, though, Larry Smith. I'm going to.
I don't know. Izar Tarandash. It's the only thing that I have to think about how common it is.
Yeah. Let me do a quick check on that to see my sources at Wikipedia and see if it was, in fact, Pearl. Larry Smith. Was it Larry Smith that did Pearl?
No, it was Larry something else.
Yeah, I don't think it was. So I mean, at the end of the day, this individual Larry Smith created this idea in 2001. And, it's like 2017 or 18 or so when somehow somebody in AppSec found it somewhere and I can't figure out exactly who the first person was to use it in the AppSec space, but who was it? Oh, I thought you were saying Matt. Matt was the first
Larry
one.
Wall.
Larry Wall was the Perl guy. Yes. How could I not remember that? It was my first programming language.
Sorry, my bad.
Try to program. Let's do some regular expressions in Perl, shall we? Come on. It was so painful. It never worked. Okay, I'm off on a whole other tangent. So, I mean, Matt, I know you've been maybe not as fond of the shift left terminology from its very early days. Give us how do you really feel about this term shift left?
I think I have this quote in our book, actually. Don't shift left, start left.
Yep.
Right. Think from requirements onward, not. And I think we traditionally or historically fall into this trap of security comes later, right? And I'm looking at the article that you're talking about from Shift Left from 2001 from Larry Smith. He's talking specifically about shifting quality left. And we've adopted this practice from a security standpoint for the exact same reasons, right? So test-driven development and having QA be part of the process. If you have requirements, why not involve QA? Well, again, if you have requirements, why not involve security? Security should be, as a stakeholder, should be introducing requirements. And when requirements are known, that's the moment. As soon as requirements are known or a concept has been developed, that's the moment when security can start to be effective. And the time where you can most cheaply impact the security of a system. And so you really don't want to, in my opinion, you don't really want to shift left, because shift left assumes you're starting from somewhere, meaning you started from as far right as possible, and you're working your way through the development lifecycle back towards requirements, or towards concept. But along the way, maybe you stop at whatever your quality gate is, your code freeze, your functional freeze date. Well, you've already built stuff, and now you have, okay, how do I retrofit, or how do I patch? Well, I have to patch after the fact, after I ship, or I have to delay shipment, and that's very costly. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to keep shifting left. I'm going to stop at development. Now I'm going to find bugs in code, but I've already architected a system. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to continue shifting left, and now I'm going to stop at architecture. Well, but now I've already set my requirements, so I built an architecture around those requirements, and I can't really retrofit those, or I've done concept development, and so I've gone down a certain path where it may be too late to make some security alterations. But if you had started left, then you could be most effective and most efficient from a resource, cost, et cetera standpoint.
Isn't that just SDL though?
Well, that's what the program, an SDL program or an SDLC that has security milestones and activities, is how you implement this. And yes, an organization that has a good security, that has a good development lifecycle that includes security at each phase of their lifecycle, has effectively already done the shifting, right?
Yeah.
Now this gets challenging if, and again, we're no longer really in a waterfall model anymore, right? Even those companies that do waterfall aren't doing waterfall. But then again, companies that doing agile aren't necessarily doing pure agile anymore either.
Yeah.
So where is left in an iterative process or a spiral, or so it gets a little bit challenging there. But basically, anytime you have concept and requirements, that's the time to get security involved, because it's the exact same time you would get. It goes back to, it's like quality. It's enough like quality that you can use it as a placeholder. If you're going to involve quality, involve security.
Yeah, and I think the part that's bothered me is this has been taken as a marketing term. It doesn't really mean, like, it still has its core meaning, but now you have, if you look in various sources, you have shift left, you have shift right, you have shift everywhere. I even found shift up and shift down references. I'm like, where is that going? Like, are we shifting up to the moon and you're going to run a secure product on the moon or something? Like,
actually, don't give them ideas, please.
We do. Well, so if we were going to look at those terms, I mean, we see this with shifting down the stack or up the stack, right? So traditionally, software security is software security. It's application development, right? As opposed to moving into the platform or moving into the hardware, right? And so you're moving down the stack. I guess
Wait,
you don't necessarily
Are you legitimizing their term here?
No, absolutely not. Just at least, or if it hasn't been coined, then maybe I'm coining it now. But
no, people have. I found people using shift up and shift down, but they didn't really have a good explanation for what it meant. They were just. Yeah. It was just another kind of marketing. Let's do something a little different than what the rest of the pack is doing. Shifting left by we're going to shift up or shift down, and
yeah, I can imagine shifting down is a lot easier to as a concept. Like if you are starting with applications already, there is no up, right? But there's probably a down.
There's always a down.
And there could be an out. I guess there could be an out as well. You know, looking beyond your application. Well, looking beyond your application now to the things around it, your ecosystem, your customer base.
I hope there aren't any marketers listening to this and they're like, ooh, that's a good idea. We should shift out. That's our new campaign. Our product shifts out right out of the building. Like it's not even there anymore.
We need some 4-dimensional.
We call it Elvis.
We need we need a fourth dimension there.
Shift Elvis. Elvis has left the building.
Well, instead of directional, so now we need time. So shift later or shift sooner. Or
why can't we time shift?
But why do we have to
time
shift
warp
at all? Like it goes together with what we were talking behind.
There's a Rocky Horror Picture Show quote going on here. We need to get introduced here.
I was singing. He was actually singing.
Okay, confession time. The first time that I heard the term shift left as applied to security, to development, the image that I had in my mind was a bunch of developers doing the shuffle.
The time warp.
It is not something I want to ever see again.
As opposed to Thriller. We could do the Thriller. It's perfect for Halloween.
Time warp.
But I think that where this goes together with what we were talking before, like we already touched it a bit in there, is that first of all, it sounds good. Like you say shift left, people can have this mental image of things tipping towards the beginning of a timeline and whatnot. So it's useful as a mental framework to think about how am I organizing my pipeline and stuff like that, right? But I think that every time that we say shift left, again, we people, all of us, the industry. I love the term, the industry. It sounds like the mafia. The industry, it just doesn't. It's very easy to say shift left, and it's very easy to say my product, my process, my way shifts left. But what are we shifting? How much are we shifting? How are we proving that it's shifting? And how are we showing that the fact that we shifted gives you a better result? That we haven't quite worked out yet.
The problem is shift is a relational term. When you shift, you start from someplace and you go to someplace. And when you say shift left, what are you shifting and where did you start from? We make the assumption when you say shift left, it means, well, I didn't shift left originally and now I'm going to shift left. So I probably wait until the end. as opposed to, well, I could be shifting from the middle somewhere and shifting left.
No, I think that you put it well when you reminded us that bolting on security is very much still a thing, unfortunately, for all the efforts that we have done in the past years. And I think that you pointed out that people adopted the shift left mentality because we were so much bolting in. But now that with what you just said, to me comes the question, how much is getting away from bolting things on in the end? How much of shifting from that is a meaningful shift to the left?
Now we're gonna.
I think unless you're introducing jumping in at requirements and concept, you're still bolting on.
Because that's
you're going to have to have to bolt on, right? You're going to have to bolt on at the end because you're going to miss stuff, right?
Won't we have to bolt on something almost always? Because there will always be a finding that happened after the thing is out and deployed.
Well, so I wouldn't say patching. I would not say patching as a bolt-on.
Patching, no. But changing stuff at the end.
Well, so here's an interesting question on that. So bolting on, I think, in my mind at least, is seen as oops, I forgot about this thing, and now somebody reminds me I need to do it, and so I'm going to bolt it on, right? Or as opposed to, I have a concept, and I want to make this thing modular, and so this is now an add-on addition that can improve capability or whatever, and maybe I can charge for extra or not, but you making an informed decision. So a lot of our work is about making informed decisions, risk decisions or business decisions, and so if an organization or product team, for instance, makes a decision to bolt on as an add-on capability, that may be still acceptable compared to the traditional bolt-on of, oh, we forgot, and now we're in reactive mode. So proactive bolt-on versus a reactive bolt-on.
So let me put something out there, and this is going to be convoluted because it's that kind of week. So I apologize from the beginning. 10 years from now, when we have application and development and deployment security people inside engineering, because they have shifted left so much, if at the end of the pipeline it is found that, hey, we forgot something or we didn't think about this at the security level, that means that what was needed, the knowledge or the finesse needed to figure out, to identify that thing, wasn't present in the engineering framework that created the thing.
Yes.
So it's almost like we need somebody with even more of a security background from those people that are in the pipeline to say, whoops, we forgot this thing, or hey, I just thought about this threat, or I just thought about this use case. Have we just closed the wheel and gone back to where we started and packaged everything?
No, and I'm going to use another quality analogy here. When you make a mistake and you ship something and you discover that you ship something, you go through an RCA process, right? Some sort of quality control process. And as long as that process is consistently applied or at least consistently devised, right, then that would work too. In other words, you don't necessarily need to have the foreknowledge to know that you missed something, because regulations will change, or customers will ask for something new, or somebody will decide to use your product in a way that it wasn't originally intended for, and now it is intended for. You just have to have the process to bring that feedback back into your life cycle and make the adjustments.
But the trigger for that is an exception. The trigger for that is, as you said, it went out and somebody corrected us.
And some escape occurred. Yeah.
In between that event of it going out and somebody being able to create an exception, there needs to be a different level that looks at different things that probably we don't look at today to say, hey, I'm going to be the last gate before this thing ships.
So I wonder, I think in engineering organizations, we call them technologists, right? We have CTO organizations that do advanced R&D, advanced concept development. I think you have those opportunities to take those functions, the outcomes of their work, and feed them into this process. And if you put security,
that's what they do. I never knew.
I think so. And so if you put security into those functions, so if you take the security folks and you put them, like take security researchers and put them in that function and have appropriate feedback and communication channels, right? That may solve the problem that you're highlighting.
God, I disagree with that at so many levels.
Chris, do I have an ally here?
CTO organizations, in my experience, they are some kind of like the gods in the Olympus saying we are looking forward 20 years and we are talking quantum cryptography and we are talking homomorphic operations.
We've moved past
why do poor people are writing PHP code? No, why do people? You poor people are still writing PHP code. Don't come bother us with your thing.
I mean,
we are somewhere else.
CTO organizations, in the context that we're talking about them here, let's be honest, a good part of their work is outbound. They're out speaking at conferences and they're thought leaders. They're like this idea where you can have 75 CTOs inside of an org, like, it's a chief. You're a chief technical officer. There's only one CTO in a company, and maybe you have one at the business unit level that's truly making technology decisions. But I see a lot of the folks that wear the title of CTO now. They're not really. They may be influencing the product a little bit, but they're primarily out trying to demonstrate technical dominance in the industry of ideas and thoughts and things. They're like a developer advocate, developer relations type of role. But I think, to kind of, I want to wrap this whole thing up here and try to put a bow on it. Shift left, build security in, whatever we want to call it. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Like even if you, and I'm not even going to say shift left, but if you built security in from the very beginning, you started left, to Matt's point, it still doesn't, it's still a process that's being executed by people that aren't perfect. That is executing tools that are not perfect. That's building software and hardware that's not perfect. So at the end of the day, these are preventative measures. They're things that we can do to try to get ahead of as many things as we possibly can. But we're still going to have challenges. There's still going to be problems that come out of it, no matter where you start in the process. And what we've learned collectively over decades of experience, all the way back to what Jarzenbeck was doing at DHS, is if you start thinking about the security things when you start building the product, you're going to have a better security outcome when you ship.
Yes.
That's really all that matters. And I think what's happened in our industry is this shift left has just been manipulated, weaponized, and used as a term for people to try to demonstrate that their product is the best one out there. And I think they missed the mark. I think they took something and they twisted it, and it doesn't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really say anything about what you do. Because you don't really shift left. Your SaaS tool doesn't shift left. Because
I think that when you say miss the mark, I think that's exactly the thing. When you point something way too much to the left, you will miss the mark that's in front of you, and that's what keeps happening. Shift left became a marketing thing. Yeah. I'm leftier than you in the timeline, so therefore I am better than you. I'm saving more money than you.
Yeah. It's kind of like a game of Frogger. You're shifting across, and there's stuff coming from the side.
Yep. And that's why I said we're shifting ourselves right off the table.
I mean, I tell you what, with that, there's no way we can continue. We're going to thanks, folks, for joining us at the security table. We have to wrap with that analogy. Shift left is wait.
What was the Frogger song?
Oh no!
Yeah. I keep thinking of the Pac-Man one. No, yeah.
Until you get run over and it.
Yeah. That's what happens when you shift left too much. You get ran over and squashed. So, all right, folks, thanks for listening to the Security Table. Hopefully you found some value in this conversation. I think we ourselves, we made some progress moving forward. So we look forward to joining us again in future weeks to hear us debate, discuss, and pick apart just about anything we can think of in the world of security. So thanks for listening.